In this format, do we have a list of those who are here, but we can't see them or not?
Mayor,
Yes. Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
If you're co-host, you can see on the right where it says panelists and attendees. Or click down at the bottom for participants. You should be able to see the list.
I can see a few. It says there are 11 panelists and 9 attendees.
Correct. If you click on the panelist tab, you'll see
Right.
everybody that's not on video. The attendees tab is everyone that has video.
And it only shows me a few of the 11.
To the right of the list, you'll have to grab the slide bar and scroll down.
Oh, okay. Okay, it's 7:01 and I think we have a quorum because I saw we had Councilman Romack, we have Councilman Donahue here, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. If you would please rise and do the Pledge of Allegiance to our flag that's going to be up in front of us here in just a second, right, Marissa? Can we do our flag or not? There we go. I pledge allegiance
To the
To the
flag
flag of the
of the
United
United
States of America and to the
and to the
republic
for which it stands,
one
nation, under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with
liberty
liberty
and justice for all. Okay, we'll get this started with councilman members' reports. Councilman Rostosi, do you have anything you'd like to say this evening?
Nothing to report, sir.
Okay, Councilman Romack,
No, I have nothing to report.
Councilman Clare,
Nothing to report, Mr. Mayor.
Councilman Donahue.
I'm on a roll. I'll take all your time. Just kidding. Anyway, actually, I want to say hooray to Team Rec Center. Andy Phillips and I did participate in the Cornhole Championship. We sucked really bad, but we were the best dressed. I will tell you that. And it was an awesome event. And they're going to do it next year and I think add more. And it really, I mean, it was really awesome. Plus, it was probably the first time most of us were social in a long time, but well done from them. The community garage sale was awesome. We drove our golf carts around and lots of people participating, I think, again, because people were out there. Some of our staff even had stuff out in their driveway. Then this Saturday, FYI, that Ride and Seek, which is a fundraiser for the Historical Society, is the coolest fundraiser I think I've ever been involved in. So you get to a spot and you put your little phone up there and get a barcode and it tells you the history of that actual spot. Really cool. So hopefully they'll have a lot of participants and raise some money. And then the last thing is working on with the marketing group on a logo for what we're going to call City Center. And Jigs has done a great job of putting together a lot of information, so much so that people aren't yet responding because there's a lot of options. And then the only other little school side, since I love that so much, is, as you know, the governor lifted the mask mandates for schools. But in fact, our Litchfield district and Agua Fria are still going to require masks since there's only 6 weeks left of school. So my personal opinion is that's the right decision. So anyway, that's all. I speak fast.
Good job. So I want to know if there are pictures of you and Andy Phillips that we'll be able to put on our website and maybe in the next city line.
Already done. And it's Andy. She's cuter than me with the I Love LP shirt on. So we're good marketing people. Trust me. Anyway.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. So I think we are now to the vice mayor because I don't see Councilman Brandon Watson.
I have nothing, Mayor. Thank you.
All righty. I don't have a lot. I just have a mention, I guess, that the Wigwam has decided to continue their mask policy requiring masks when you're on their property, and that includes both the resort and the golf courses for at least another month. So that means through at least the end of May. And they're doing it, actually, they're doing it for two reasons. One is a concern that they want to make sure that all of their employees have an opportunity to become vaccinated, so that it's out of safety for their employees. But also, interestingly enough, they are now receiving a significant amount of interest in convention business. A lot of the business that had been postponed at the beginning of this crisis is now getting scheduled. They're pushing it out into the fourth quarter of this year, so starting in approximately September. And they're also fielding a significant number of new inquiries about convention business or business from large corporations who want to bring groups in. And almost universally, those groups are concerned about what types of precautions the resort is taking to protect the conventioners' business employees. So they don't want to bring their employees to a resort that is not following the safest, most rules for people who are on resort property. So they're seeing both of those situations. So they're going to see their mask mandate go at least until the end of May, and it could even extend beyond that. So just a piece of community information. So with that, we'll go to the city manager's report on current events. Mr. City Manager, do you have a report you want to go through?
Yes, sir, I do. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Good to see everybody. So you have the report. I'm just going to hit on a few of the highlighted points. One, the applications for the appropriations ended last Friday. I understand from Tricia, we received 11 applications last year. We received 12, so that's pretty standard. That meeting will be coming up on May the 12th. I sent you an email out yesterday about the GMP. You may have seen that Woody's working with Aiken Gardner on that, trying to get a more accurate cost on the GMP, so we'll let you know more. That's what's currently holding us up on the city center meetings, is waiting to get a hard number for that, as I'm sure you've seen that email. Woody's working also with the Public Works Director. We're working on making some plans for a new Public Works building. There's, as you know, there's the buildings over there that used to be Rural Metro, and to see what we can do to get a better shot for that Public Works, but obviously we can talk about that more going forward. The Scout Park Playground did reopen last week. It had been closed since the storm a few months ago. If you remember, it ripped the top off the playground and also off the Ramada. So what they did, they come and capped the poles just so we could get the playground open again. And they'll be doing the final repairs for that in late May or in early June, but it is open again. Paige spoke with the contractor regarding the construction sales tax. She did give a report, a hard number for that today of $840,000, which I will say is right where she thought it would be. So appreciate all the work she's done on that, finding out where we are. Also, we did let Buckeye know how much of that money is theirs. So I'm sure they'll be happy to receiving that. Told them, please return the favor if they find any of our money that we're missing. Please send it back our way. We did send a letter, of course, to MCSO as previously discussed regarding Sheriff's Office service for next year, and we've been meeting a lot with Avondale for transition. A good update on Southwest Gas. So you may remember there's been some discussion about the new gas main that's going to go along Litchfield Road. They were scheduling that for 2023. We had some concerns about tearing up fresh asphalt. And I know Woody had been discussed with Southwest Gas, so had the mayor. And we also reached out to Congresswoman Lesko's office, and for whatever reason or multiple reasons, they have now moved that project up till 2021. So that's a good win for the city. So it will probably be later this fall. We're trying to get them to do it when we're building the road, but either way, it's been moved up to this year. So that's great progress, and thank you for everyone that was involved in that. And the last thing I would say is I'm still planning for all the staff to return to working in office on Monday, May 3rd. We're still working toward that. We still have some employees that are telecommuting, but it'd be nice to get everybody back in office. Obviously, as long as everybody's safe, we want to keep that in mind. Thank you for your report. Welcome any questions you may have at all.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Matthew, in your report, you indicate someone drafted a letter for the mayor's signature on a proposed state income tax reduction. I know we can't talk about it probably, but you can elaborate. Would you tell us what that's all about?
Absolutely. So there's a discussion going on now at the legislature about a proposal to reduce the state income tax. If this comes through, it would reduce our state shared income by 27%, or roughly $250,000 a year. It is a big reduction. The league reached out to every city in the state and asked all the cities to draft a letter to our representatives, asking them obviously to vote no against this.
Maybe just, let me just interrupt for a second, Mr. City Manager, just so the city council knows what we're talking about. The state shared revenues, one component there are three components to state shared revenue. One component is cities and towns receive 15% of the amount of income taxes that are collected by the state. So if the state reduces the amount of income taxes to be collected, we lose, within that part of state shared revenue, we lose 15% of the reduction. So that's what the whole issue is about. Go ahead, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interrupt, but it's important to know where the discussion, why we're even having it.
No, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And we did draft that letter. It was signed and sent. And we also got contact information so the mayor could reach out to our representatives. And again, as far as I know, almost every city in the state has came out against this for obvious reasons. So we'll see what happens. Again, it's not to the point of being a bill yet, but it is being discussed. So we'll see what happens from there.
And just a little more clarification of what was in the letter. It is not the cities and towns and Litchfield Park and my letter is not about opposing any policy decisions that the state may make about the state's collection or the way the state designs its revenue sources. So if from a state policy they want to reduce income taxes, that's not our purview, and it's something that the state legislature and the governor need to decide. But what the cities and towns have asked is that if you make these changes, then keep the cities and towns financially whole so that the cities and towns don't suffer because of a policy decision that is made by the state legislature. And what that would require is that the sharing ratio would need to go from about 15% of income tax collections to just over 20%, 21%. And then the cities and towns as a group would be financially not impacted by the decision by the state. And the reduction that is experienced would be experienced only at the state as part of their decision on how they want to finance state government. So it's not a matter of opposing a policy. It's rather trying to keep the cities and towns financially whole. Councilman Donahue.
Mayor and council, we really can't have a discussion on this item because it's not agendized.
There no questions on the item. We're just trying to explain what the letter was about.
Okay.
Okay, I guess I can't ask that question then.
Okay, keep
Except
it for
that it has to do
keep it
with
for
that.
later.
What's that?
I say you can keep it for later. We can't go into a discussion of the policy itself, but what the letter urged the legislature was to keep the cities and towns financially held harmless. Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Joe, I heard a report on this morning, and it's regarding a flat tax. And if the city or if the state decides to go to a flat tax, then all the cities are going to suffer. And I think I believe that's what the mayor is referring to.
It is. Our cities and town revenues can go down by 20% on that component of state shared revenue.
Right. Okay.
So do you have anything further, Mr. City Manager?
No, sir. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Next item up is a call to community. Do we now have the ability to do the call? And if we do we have any requests to speak from the community?
We do have the ability. We do not have any requests to speak.
Okay. Well, for those community members that are in on the meeting, make a note to yourself that in the future, we have added the call to community back to our virtual meeting agendas So if you have the desire to speak, you will be afforded that opportunity once again in the same section of the agenda that we've had in the past. Next item is presentations. As we have done in the past for these virtual meetings, I just want to note to everybody, and you have in your packets, there were proclamations done to recognize Arbor Day. Arbor Day is a very important day for many of our residents and for the city itself because of the number of trees that we have in our community and the importance that trees play in the atmosphere of our community. So we have a proclamation to recognize Arbor Day. It's also Building Safety Month, so we've done a proclamation to recognize building safety, which obviously is important to everyone. And it's Municipal Clerks Week, so we want to honor our municipal clerk and all of the people in the clerk's office and thank them for the good work that they do for us. Our city would not function properly without a good clerk's office. So thank you, City Clerk Roth.
You're welcome. Thank you, Mayor.
Now we'll go to our report section, and that's a report from the Goodyear Fire Department kicks that off. It says we have Chief Luizzi. Hello, Chief. I can see you. You're here.
Hi, good evening, Mayor and Council. Okay, so for the month of March, we had 71 total calls, which is up slightly, but if you look at over the last 3 months, it kind of balances calls out because we did have a low month of about 47. 61 of those calls were EMS related, so about 86% of the call volume, which is a little higher than usual, but for the most part, right in the same neighborhood. We had 8 that occurred at La Loma. 3 of those calls were reviewed directly with staff at La Loma. And then we had 13 at Las Cruces, which is down from last month, but still there was 1 that was an outlier that we have reached out to staff at Las Cruces and want to make sure that they are reviewing that call internally for their use. Other than that, I didn't have anything else specific to the report, so I didn't know if there were any questions regarding the report.
Questions from council? I don't see any, Chief. It looks like a pretty normal month. Thank you for the particular. Thank you for the efforts that your office or your department is putting in at the 2 assisted living facilities in the city. You know, we appreciate that, and obviously we all want to work to where we efficiently provide the service they need, but that we don't end up providing services that they don't need. So thank you for your efforts on that.
Absolutely, and I just wanted to assure you, Mr. Mayor and City Council, that we have already reached out to the Avondale Police Department. We have connected with Chief Espinoza, so we expect a very easy transition regarding that coming up in the next few months. Also, to Councilman Donahue's point, we're going to be participating in the Ride and Seek on Saturday. So we've partnered with Phoenix Children's Hospital, and our Goodyear Fire Department Crisis Risk Reduction crew will be out there, and we have about 80 helmets to hand out. So hopefully kids will come out, we can get them properly fitted for bike helmets, so we can keep everybody safe.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
So we'll go on to the report from Maricopa County Sheriff's Office. We have Captain Bratton with us. Good to see you, Captain.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. We had for the month of March 120 calls for service, 177 total events. That included an aggravated assault, which is an incident where the suspect tried to take the deputy's gun. The suspect was tased and taken into custody. There were 2 assaults. One was a domestic violence, 1 sexual assault, 3 robberies. In all 3 incidents, 2 of those were committed by the same suspect and the other a different suspect, and both suspects were taken into custody. 3 thefts, 1 shoplifting, 1 vehicle theft, which is a golf cart, disorderly conduct, 2 traffic accidents, 5 traffic warnings, 4 traffic citations, 1 fight, 1 trespassing, 1 animal problem, 2 juvenile disturbing calls, 4 neighbors disturbing, 3 suspicious activity calls, 14 citizen assists, 4 parking violations, 2 hazards or fires, 3 commercial alarms, 3 residential alarms, 2 civil matters, 1 natural death, 1 missing person, 2 community policing contacts, and 59 patrol or vacation watch or welfare checks. That's all I have for the report. If you had any questions.
Any questions from council? I just have one quick question. I'm curious whether we've gotten any reports through the flock license plate readers of any vehicles of interest either going into or coming out of the park.
Nothing yet. In fact, I have a meeting next week with the representative from Flock. And we've started pushing out our training for the use of the cameras for all the deputies and detectives, but we haven't received anything yet.
Okay,
at least
thank you.
not for Litchfield Park.
I'm curious because I know that almost immediately they started seeing some interesting information. And I say the MCSO saw some interesting information on the vehicles going into and out of Youngtown, which started the same system about the same time that we did.
Right. Nothing from Litchfield Park yet.
Okay, thank you. We appreciate your service. Please let your guys know that we appreciate the service they've given to us, in this last month and also over the entire contract.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we have our staff report, monthly reports, Finance Department, Miss Paige Peterson.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Tonight I have the March finance report. Let me just share my screen really quick. Are you able to see that okay?
Yes.
Yes.
I'd like to start off with our to March of 2020, and year over year, retail is up 26%. Online sales, they're up considerably, but I think that's more reporting, and it was it's still relatively new. I'd also like to point out that a lot of the larger online retailers, they had been paying sales tax prior to the Wayfair decision, and they were just reporting it under retail rather than online. So even though we are receiving online sales tax revenue now, a portion of that we were already receiving. It just fell under retail. Restaurant and bars had another hard month, down 21%. Maybe now with the changes in the vaccine rolling out, hopefully we'll see the restaurant and bars start to pick up again. Utilities were down, rentals were up considerably, 41%, and then other is down 24%, and most of that it's directly related to the tourism. So in total, sales tax this March was up 5% over last March, and year over year up 18%. Our construction sales tax, you'll see this negative number here, just over $5,000. That's because the first, one of the contractors that had paid us in air, they filed for their refund last month. And the other contractor, they were making up about 80% of our total construction sales tax revenue prior to us figuring out this mistake. So March was the first month that they did not report. So essentially losing that and then having the other one file for their refund, we had a negative amount. Matthew mentioned earlier in his report, we do have a hard number of about $840,000. I'll be talking with the company by Friday to work out when and how they're going to file for that. Hopefully they'll space it out and not do it in one fell swoop, but I should have more information on that next month. And that's all I have for the sales tax report, unless anybody has any questions.
Questions from the council, and I can't see everybody because of the way the screen is configured. So if you have a question, just, I guess,
Mr. Mayor,
yes.
it's Councilman Claire. I have a question for Paige. Paige, so is our total exposure between both contractors 840,000?
The biggest one was 840,000 and the other one was just under 40,000. So total of about 880.
Okay, thank you.
So Ms. Peterson, our cash balance reflects the $40,000 claim having been paid or not paid?
It reflects the 40,000. It doesn't reflect the 840 yet. I was actually just making a note on the report that I printed out. So I can, even though the report's going to have a higher number, I was going to verbally give you what the ending cash balance will be after that post.
Then I'll save that question. You can act like I asked it in a little bit.
Okay.
Any other questions to council about sales tax? All right, go ahead.
Next, I have our general fund summary. Local taxes, which I just went over, is at 92% of budget estimates, so doing really well. State shared revenue is at 81%. The one time that's going to stay that way, that was just a timing issue. Licenses and permits, they're only at 64%. We can attribute most of that to COVID, so hopefully that picks up next year. Same thing for recreation charges, for services and special events. Fines are almost right at budget. Interest is really low right now, so we're only at 6%. Miscellaneous revenue, it's at 187%. It's over $95,000, but the insurance payment that we had, Matthew mentioned earlier, the playground that was destroyed, we received reimbursement for that, so that's included in there, and that's what's making that number so high. So in total, our general fund revenues are at 82%, which is really well since we're at 75% through the year. Our general fund departments, everybody is right on track. The city manager is just, as soon as we do the budget amendment at the end of the year for the COVID business assistance grant, this number will change. If that wasn't in there, this department would be right on budget. Budget and finance, we did have some larger one-time costs, like our audit, for example. So this should smooth out by the end of the year. Same thing with engineering services, and then our debt service has been paid 100% for the year. So in total, general fund expenses are only at 69%. So doing really well, staying in budget there. Oops, I didn't mean to go that far. Construction sales tax, obviously when that 840,000 refund hits, this number is going to drop considerably. And then our ending balance right here, I have it at 15.6, but it's actually going to be closer to 14.8. And that might be spread out over a few months. I'm not quite sure yet, but we do know that that 840,000 is coming.
I don't have. I'm sorry. The 14.8. The 14.8 ending fund balance includes the funds that are also in the HERF account, which is special use funds. And so it's both general fund and specially identified funds.
This one is just the general fund only. I do have total fund balance for all the funds towards the end of the report.
Okay, so it's only the general fund.
Correct. This is only the general fund. So still a very healthy cash.
Oh, it's very good.
The detail for recreation services and special events, I don't have anything particular to point out. Happy to answer any questions, though, if there are any about that.
Any questions from council about these last couple slides? Okay, I don't see any.
And then just to wrap up, the HERF fund, we have been spending a little HERF money. There are some projects going on. So at the end of March, the HERF balance was just over 1.3 million. Our streetlight improvement district, there is a negative balance right now, but that will smooth out when the second half of property tax collections starts rolling in. The court enhancement fee fund has an ending balance of just over 193,000. So here's our fund balance for all funds. I do have 17.4 here, which once that credit hits, that's going to drop by 840,000. So it'll actually be closer to 16.6. And this is the general fund here again by itself, which is closer to 14.8. So even having that considerable hit, our other revenues are doing so well, we're still in a really good position. And that's all I have unless there's any more questions.
All right, questions from council?
I have a question. This is Ann Donahue.
Yeah,
So
now- yeah. Go ahead.
the HERF
Now I can
funds,
see everybody again. Go ahead.
the HERF funds can be used to bring the road in, correct? The road that we're going to be bringing in from Village Parkway, can that be paid for with HERF or budgeted towards HERF funds?
As long as it's for public use, it can be, yes. And that's a
So-
public road, right?
Yeah. So I guess I asked the mayor or Matthew, so is a big chunk of that going to go towards that?
Well, the intention is to use the HERF funds whenever we can for capital projects so we start getting that fund balance down. So a lot of our CIP that is related to road projects will come from HERF money. So that HERF money, the intention is to use it rather than general fund money.
Yeah. And then each year, I mean, when do we receive more HERF funds? Is that yearly, annually?
We receive it monthly. The same time that we receive our sales tax revenues, the Department of Revenue deposits the funds in our account. We receive about 440,000 a year. It's based on mostly on the gasoline tax.
But it doesn't go away. So clearly what we have now has been cumulative over the last couple of years because we haven't spent it. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
It's really, there were supposed to be reallocations of those funds each year, and it was not properly done by our previous accounting department. So the fund balance is built up when they should not have. So good news, bad news, we have the fund balance, but we'll go ahead and get that corrected in the next year or two. Okay. Thank you for your report, Ms. Peterson. We appreciate it. Keep up your good work. Next month, your goal is to bring in unrestricted money of about 25 million.
You got
it. All right. Next item is the city center update, and I can see we have our engineer, Mr. Scouten, already up and ready to go.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. Just let me give you a quick update and talk about a few things. So as Matthew mentioned, we've made some really good progress with Southwest Gas on moving up the time frame for the installation of that main to later this year. We still have to figure out the logistics of how that's going to work with the construction that's going on in Litchfield Road, but we've already got a couple of ideas on how we can do that. We're continuing to make progress on completing the construction plans. Grading and drainage is essentially complete. Paving plans are about 95%. Landscape, hardscape, lighting, and miscellaneous improvements are at about 60%. The park plans are getting started right now, or probably about 30% by now. All the utility plans are complete, and we expect Southwest Gas and Cox to be working on relocations of some of their facilities in the next few weeks. As Matthew mentioned, we received GMP #1 from Aiken Gardner for clearing the site, demolition, removal of the wall and some pavement, old pavement and so on. And I am in the process of going through that right now, line by line, and I've come up with several items that I need to talk to Aiken Gardner about. For one thing, there's about $500,000 of allowances and contingencies in the GMP. And those are basically there because if we want to change the scope of work, we have some money in the budget to do that. But most of that money will not be spent. It's there in case we need it. There's also quite a bit of one-time costs that are for the entire project. For example, putting up the fence around the site to secure the site. That's in this GMP, but it, of course, will be used throughout the project. I have some questions, a lot of questions on the earthwork volumes, and I'm working with EPS to work through that and understand that better. And then just checking their unit prices and looking at sales taxes. There's quite a bit of money in there for sales taxes, but I'm not sure what they would be paying sales taxes on. So since this is just demolition and grading. So anyway, working with that, working through that with Aiken Gardner and negotiating all of those numbers. And then we also have Aiken Gardner preparing an overall cost estimate. As you might expect, they're a little nervous about preparing a cost estimate for a project for which they haven't yet seen some of the plans. So we are working with them to get them the information they need to prepare a good cost estimate. And they have told me that they will have that cost estimate to me by the second week in May. And I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
Questions from council. Councilman Romack.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thanks, Woody, for your report. I worked with Woody on the selection of this Aiken Gardner, and I would just like to know, how are they to deal with on a kind of a daily basis and to negotiate with, Woody?
Well, the hard negotiations haven't started yet. They'll be starting here in a few weeks, or a few days, I should say. But so far, they've been excellent to work with. They've attended all of the meetings, and they have looked into various value engineering types of items. For example, with the stormwater retention facility, they came up with another idea on how to build that would save a significant amount of money. So they've been very helpful, very good to work with, and we'll just see how the negotiations go on this first GMP.
Good, thank you.
Mr. Vice Mayor.
Well, thank you, Mayor. This is for Woody and Paige. I guess it's this current item and the last item. Do we have any, to build the city center project, do we have any spending limitations dealing with our budget and the state law? We do have a spending cap of some sort.
Yeah, Vice Mayor, that is true. There is the expenditure limit. If you issue debt, you're able to exclude that. There are some things that are excludable, but I need to, I'll look into that more and give you more details when we have our city center financing study session. But I know some of it can be excludable.
Okay, debt could be the key then. Okay, thank you.
And we also, in our current budget, we have a very significant item in the capital budget for city center infrastructure, as well as a significant contingency item. So at least for this year, we have, I think, enough space to be able to spend what we need to spend to get the project started. So the budget limitation shouldn't be a problem.
We're almost at the end of this year. So I mean, we could sort of double up if we could part of it before this year end, and part of it in next year.
Right, yeah, we've been held up because the first response from Aiken Gardner on the GMP was just so far higher than what we anticipated. I mean, we had hoped to actually have that process started now and be able to commit that money now. But at this point, we can't until we get through this issue of really understanding why it's different and what the total amount is for infrastructure. Make sure that the whole project can proceed in with the kind of financial strategy that we had been talking about at the city manager's city center working group.
Mr. Mayor, I should have mentioned that we've also talked to a couple of commercial real estate consultants and are receiving proposals from those firms to, help us with analyzing the project and working on the financing arrangements.
Good. That's good. That's a good idea. All right, any other questions from council? All right, thank you for your report, Mr. Scouten. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is our consent agenda, item 8. Looks like it's A through H. Is there any member of council that would like to take any item that's on the consent agenda off the consent agenda for discussion? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Item G.
G, okay. Any other items? If not, is there a motion to adopt consent items 8A through H with the exception of G? Moved by Councilman Donahue, seconded by Councilman Clare. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, consent agenda items other than G are adopted. Item G, Mr. Vice Mayor, do you have a particular question you'd like to have discussed?
Yeah, I mean, this is an archery project. I'd like to know which park, how many people we're expecting, and are we making sure that we're keeping this away from people's houses, which they could possibly get upset?
Mr. McCoy, are you here to speak to those questions?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
There you are. Welcome.
So it's going to be held at Camelback Park, and the maximum amount of registrants are going to be 14 total. So all 3 days if we max out, there'll be 14 registrants, including the 2 instructors.
They're going to shoot into hay bales or something?
Yeah, they will. The way that they'll be lining up, they won't be shooting towards any of the houses. It'd be they would probably set up towards the corner of heading out towards Bird Lane, and then shooting towards the fence where all the trees are in the back towards the Dysart somewhat, but still far enough where we won't have any arrows going or anything like that going over towards the road.
Any further questions, Mr. Vice Mayor?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Okay, any questions from anybody else on council? Okay, is there a motion to approve the use agreement with Anchor Point Archery as presented in your packet and discussed by Mr. McCoy?
I'll move.
Moved by Councilman Romack, seconded by Councilman Donahue. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, item 8G is adopted. Now we'll go on to item 9, which is our normal business agenda. The first item is an ordinance on recreational marijuana use. We have Jason Sanks. Is he here? I don't see his name.
Mayor, it'll just be a moment. He's been moved over.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, good evening.
Wonderful. All right, this is fun. I like the new format. It's a little bit of a surprise when you go live. Mayor and Council, you saw this ordinance introduction last month. It's for the, and mind you, please, that the proposed action would be to adopt the ordinance with the emergency clause so that it takes effect immediately rather than with the usual 30-day period. It would be an ordinance to adopt recreational marijuana distribution and sales, and basically following in line with statutory requirements based on recently approved legislation, and that it would mirror the same criteria that we have related to medical marijuana, which is already in our zoning ordinance. And so that was the intent of the presentation when you had the ordinance introduction. If you have any further questions, of course, I could elaborate, but I do believe we did go through most of those talking points, and nothing has changed since the last hearing.
Questions from council? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt ordinance 21-248 covering recreational marijuana use and declaring an emergency?
So moved and declare an emergency.
Moved by Vice Mayor, seconded by Councilman Clare. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted and an emergency is declared relating to it. Thank you, Mr. Sinks.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council.
Next item is the Vista Verde Drainage Improvement Project, Mr. Scouten. And before you get started, so that we make sure that we're not spinning our wheels here, the agreement that I saw in the council packet was not signed by the HOA. Do we have a signed agreement from the HOA that you're going to be presenting?
It's my understanding that we have received that signed agreement.
Who has it?
City clerk has it.
Okay, so we have a signed agreement.
Yes.
Okay, then Mr. Scouten, please make your presentation.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. I'm sure you know that for the last few years, we've been working with the condos HOA over there on Vista Verde, just south of Acacia Way, as a result of some flooding that they incurred in 2017. We were able to get a grant through the flood control district to help pay for this project, and we've been working very hard with the HOA and the residents to come up with a design that would be acceptable to them. And it basically is a channel or swale project that and improving some of the catch basins that captures more water upstream, and then what water does come into the Vista Verde area diverts it overland if the storm drain is not able to handle it. Anyway, we've come up with a design now that the HOA board members have told me would be acceptable. And we're moving ahead with preparing the preliminary design documents for the HOA to approve and also for the flood control district to approve. But one of the things that we're required to do under the IGA with the flood control district is to take responsibility for the operation and maintenance of the flood control district or the flood control facilities. We are allowed to delegate that responsibility, in this case to the HOA, and that's what this agreement does. So the HOA has agreed to take on the maintenance of the drainage facilities to keep them clean and clear and operable at all times, and to provide any ongoing repairs or maintenance to the facilities. The city, of course, under the IGA remains responsible, ultimately responsible. So there are provisions in the agreement for the city to come in and do the maintenance in case the HOA fails to do it, and then charge the cost of that to the HOA. So this is basically one step further in the process toward building this project and taking care of that flooding situation there. Thank you.
Questions from council? Councilman Donahue.
So that's interesting that the HOA has decided that they will manage that. Does that mean that they'll hire somebody to do that, or some of those guys, like our friends that met with us, are coming with
Yeah,
a shovel.
we're
I'm
gonna-
gonna check out the
The former mayor is going to clean out the storm drains.
Yeah. Oh, are they gonna, do they have funding, I guess, to hire someone to watch that?
Yeah, their portion of it doesn't require that much maintenance. The storm drain system and the catch basins is the city's responsibility because, they're in our city streets and they carry the water, the storm drain pipe carries the water to the lake. So it's our responsibility to clean those and, keep them in good working order. So what's left for the HOA to maintain would be an overland swale or very shallow channel, which will have grass on it and they'll mow it and so on. And then, so that's, relatively easy maintenance. And then they will also have a dry well that they will need to clean out maybe every 2 or 3 years, depending on how many storms there are. And that's, you just bring in a dry well maintenance company and they take care of that. So not a lot of maintenance for them.
And probably visual check, or if it gets too many leaves, they'll call us. But anyway, thank you. I was just curious how that was going to be managed.
Right. And of course, we should keep an eye on it too, just to make sure they're doing their job.
All right, any questions from anybody else, any other council member? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. Woody, in your report, there was some indication there were maybe prior designs that the HOA did not approve or agree to. What was that all about?
Well, it was a typical engineer solution to the problem. Let's build a trapezoidal channel. It's like the Corps of Engineers come in to fix a problem by building a gigantic dam or a flood channel or something like that. So it was a little harsh in terms of being so close to the condos. So what we've done is worked with them to still end up more or less with a channel, but it's a much kinder and gentler channel than what we had as the first design option. And that's basically what they were concerned about, was the aesthetics and this channel calling attention perhaps to a drainage issue which might lower the value of their properties.
So if I understand right, you're saying that there was talk about designing something that pretty clearly would work in the rarest of rare storms, but may not work in that rarest of rare storms?
Oh, no, it'll still work. It's just a kinder and gentler solution. It's a much more shallow but wider channel. That's why I call it a swale instead of a channel. So it's, the side slopes are only 10-to-1, which is, mowable with a riding mower. There's a shallow basin at the end of it because, we couldn't get the golf course to cooperate with us to be able to extend a channel onto their property. So at the end of it is a shallow retention or detention basin with an overflow into the underground pipe. And again, I want to repeat that this channel, this swale, will hardly ever see water in it other than just some local runoff. The main purpose of it is to provide a backup in case the storm drain and the curb inlets are either clogged or overwhelmed by a very heavy rainfall.
It's kind of like the spillway on a dam, Vice Mayor. You don't expect the water ever to get up high enough to go over that spillway. It'd be very unlikely for any significant water to get in the swale.
But it will
Yeah.
provide the protection that we've been trying to accomplish.
The natural drainage out of there, the current drainage out of there is over land that may not even be a swale, even that gets into one of the golf course lakes. Is that correct?
Yes, you're correct. It's very, very flat, but it does flow toward the golf course.
And we were,
the problem is that we have some of those condos there's 3 or 4 condos right at the kind of the south end of a group of condos, and their floors are lower than the surrounding ground around them, including the road. And so what this whole system does is it keeps the water from going to those places because there's more areas where the ground is now low enough that it'll go there. And there's a significant amount of additional drainage that kind of sucks the water out of the whole system before it would ever get to that point. So it's, you know, it's a whole system of features that should protect those condos quite nicely.
There was attempts for quite a while to work with the golf course, I thought, to make sure we could get that water across there.
They refuse to deal with that. So the water from all rain all goes across that golf course. That's just that's a historical fact. It's the way the whole project, this whole part of the village was designed, is to drain through that golf course and go to those lakes.
Yeah, the original.
That will still be true. It's just going to get there a slightly different way.
Okay, so
what we originally wanted to do was to go ahead and make the contours in the fairways and around the tee boxes to make them, to make them want to carry the water in a certain way, so it kept excess water out of areas of the fairway that isn't particularly good for the operation of the golf course. And JDM would not participate in that process. So the design would be better had we been able to look at the contours in the fairways and around the tee boxes also. But since we couldn't, the water is going to flow like it's always flowed.
Okay, thank you.
Which is going to flood those fairways if it gets to be a really bad rain.
One way to look at it is there's two components. There's capturing more water upstream, and we're doing that by increasing the capacity of 4 upstream catch basins. And we're capturing the water before it gets to the condos. Basically, the way it works today is if a big flood comes down Vista Verde, it will go right through the condos. So we're trying to capture that water and divert it around the condos so it doesn't do that.
Any other questions for the council? Okay, is there a motion to approve the drainage channel design? Oh, Councilor Rostosi.
So moved.
We got it. Let me finish the motion so we get it on the record. To approve the drainage channel design construction maintenance agreement for the Vista Verde Drainage Improvement Project. It's been moved by Councilman Rostosi. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Clare. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, motion is adopted. Thank you, Mr. Scouten. Now we go on to the perimeter wall phase 5 bid award. Mr. Scouten.
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, you'll recall that I think it was November 5th of last year, we opened bids for this perimeter wall project, which is located on the east side of Litchfield Road between the golf cart underpass and Bird Lane. We only received one bid, and that bid was about $300,000 over our budget. And that budgeted amount had been based on the previous wall construction in 2016 and 2017 with a bit of an inflation factor, but obviously not enough. So the mayor and council rejected that bid in November, and then directed staff to look into other methods for procuring contractors to build this project, hopefully at a lower price. So we went to Aiken Gardner under the contract that we currently have with them for the city center project and asked them to give us some quotes. A couple of things that they did was they got quotations from 2 masonry companies and then added on their project management costs. And then they also got a quote from a different type of block wall system. In the attachment to the staff report is referred to as John K, which is a company that makes, basically it's a gravity wall type design. Doesn't use mortar, but it uses reinforced concrete in the cells of the block. I had concerns that wall may not be structurally sufficient above about an 8-foot height. And in some cases on our wall, we have about 9 or 10 feet of height. And I was also concerned that it would not produce the same aesthetic look that we currently have in the perimeter walls. And you can see in the spreadsheet that was attached to the staff report that that was the lowest option that Aiken Gardner came up with. But by adding on the work that they would do, which would be excavating the foundations and some other things, and then also dealing with the residential rear yard issues, you can see that the price came out about 1.6 million. Now, 300,000 of that was Aiken Gardner's allowance for dealing with the rear yard issues, like, pool equipment attached to the wall, and all number of things, shrubs, trees, and so on that are right up to against the existing wall, as well as privacy and security of the rear yards during construction. So even if that $300,000 was reduced to zero, the price is still 1.358 million. So I decided to go back to the original bidder, Straight Arrow Contracting, and ask them if they were still interested in doing the project. And if so, what kind of an increase would they want? At first, he said he didn't think he needed an increase, but then he came back later and said, yeah, he checked with his vendors, and he asked for a $26,000 increase on his bid. So he's willing to, Straight Arrow Contracting is willing to go ahead and do the perimeter wall replacement project in the amount of $1,147,133 and do it this year. So I think this is the best price that we're going to get for this wall. And based on what I've seen and heard about concrete, steel, concrete block, wages, all of those skyrocketing right now due to demand, I don't think this is going to come down at all in the next, at least in the next few years, couple of years. So I'm recommending that we go ahead and award this project to Straight Arrow Contracting and get it underway.
Questions from council? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor. This works out to about $360 a line foot, $40 a square foot. John, are you seeing prices like that out there in the market right now?
Not at all. It's still very expensive. We're in kind of a unique time right now, at least in my industry, and things have gone up way more than you would have anticipated, but not like that.
Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. I'm seeing prices escalating. Steel prices have gone up. They may level off at some point. There's more demand than there is supply of labor and materials. So there's a lot of fat in a lot of these jobs right this minute. I guess the question is, do we want to pay a premium to get this done earlier, or sit back and watch and wait and see if the market corrects at some point?
What's a priority on this, Woody?
It's really the residents' priority. They have been clamoring for this wall for quite a while. And I'd also like to mention that there are a few things about this wall that are a little bit unique compared to some of the other walls that we've done. For one thing, we have a number of palm trees that are very close to the existing wall, so close that the structural engineer had to design what's called a bridge footing, so that we have an L-shaped footing under this wall that comes out towards the street. But when you get up to a palm tree, you can't do that because you destroy the palm. So the L footing has to go away wherever there's a palm tree, and basically a bridge footing built to span that gap in the footing. So there's a lot of structural things in the design of this wall. It's also taller in some respects, especially in a couple of areas. It gets up to about 10 feet. And once you get over about a 6-foot wall height, the structural aspects of it become much more complicated.
Yeah, the other thing that I think increases the cost of this type of wall is, we're building it in relatively short sections in people's backyards. So you've got a lot of security issues and privacy issues. It's just it's a little different beast than just going out and building a block wall around a development. If you have an open development with nothing around it, you can put a wall in. You can work in some long sections and get pretty efficient at laying the block. You have, I think, a lot more difficulty when you're doing it in this kind of a setting. So the wall's typically going to cost more than what you're going to compare in a normal development.
That's a good point.
Councilman Donahue.
Thank you. So this is the very first one that we totally said no to because it was so outrageously expensive. Is that right?
Yes.
And it's not, the trouble is we were comparing the expense of this with the expense of a wall that we built almost 4 years ago.
Okay.
So the
Gotcha.
costing is different. And what I had wanted to do is to make sure that we had exhausted I was concerned because we only had one bidder, and I was concerned that we get other cost data to see if this bid was reasonable in any light. Now, I'm sure there are some ways you can look at this bid and say it's not reasonable, but if we go out and we have this construction manager at risk, Aiken Gardner, go through and try to get a better price, and they're just not able to do any better than this price, then it lends some credibility to the price itself, and particularly when you realize that you're comparing it to something in 2017.
It's the sign of the times price is what it is. So it is outrageous, but it's the sign of the times. So to speak.
Yeah, so to speak, that's correct. And it is important to the city center development to go ahead and get this built, because those residents are already suffering from a lot of increased traffic on Litchfield Road. From the backyards of many of those residents, the current wall is about 4.5 to 5 feet tall. So their noise level is quite high. And this has been a priority for those neighbors for a long time. So while I'm not excited about spending as much as we're going to have to spend on this section, I think it is something that we need to do. And I look at it as being a reasonable price because of the information that we developed since that time. And we're not seeing pricing being a lot less.
And Mayor, I did talk to a couple of the companies who had expressed interest in providing a bid, but did not. And I talked to them about why they didn't. And they said that they are so busy building walls for new development where they can set up a program and just crank out a wall and make a nice profit on it. Whereas this one, has all the issues of the palm trees and APS facilities in the way, and the rear yards, privacy and security. So they're kind of turning their nose up at this and saying, why would I take this on when I can go, build all the other kinds of walls I want, day in and day out, and make better profit on it.
Yeah, it makes sense. Any other questions or comments from council? Mr. Vice Mayor?
Does the demo in this include the wall that's up now in front of the city center property?
No, that's in Aiken Gardner's GMP #1.
So we're just tearing, that wall is just being torn down. Okay, anything else? Okay, is there a motion to award the revised bid to Straight Arrow Contracting for perimeter wall phase 5 in the amount of $1,147,133?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Clare. Is there a second? Second by Councilman Rostosi. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposing the motion, please signify by saying nay. Okay, don't see any nays, so the ayes have it, and we have awarded the contract. We'll get this moving along. I don't believe there is a provision for an executive session, but I don't believe that we need an executive session. Do you agree, Mr. City Attorney?
Correct, Mayor. We don't have
Okay.
an executive session.
Then is there a motion we have Councilman Romack. Do you want an executive session, Councilman Romack, or do you want to move to adjourn? Or neither?
1 second. I want to make a comment, and Joe, this may be out of line, but I think that we need to publicize the idea that we're going to be changing our police protection, because as was mentioned earlier to me today, is you're liable to run into a lot of unhappy residents when they start issuing speeding tickets on some of our city streets. The other thing is I think that we should be offering at some point some sort of bike laws, because the way people ride bikes around here, you're headed for trouble. And I think that by changing to Avondale, I think we need to warn our residents.
Okay, and the bike law issue is something the city attorney can take a look at and see what our ordinances are now. And it may be that many of our bikers already violate those ordinances.
Right.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Moved by Councilman Stossy, seconded by Councilman Romack and Councilman Clare. Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, we're adjourned.
All right.
Thank you for your time and attention this evening, council. All of the residents appreciate it.
Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
Good night.
Night.